5 in front of item 4. This is regarding a memorandum that I submitted, and just using the logic that I think the priority should be to examine expenses before increasing fees. That would be my logic. So, Mr. Parking?
Take a second to get all that paperwork out of there.
I know, I'm pretty sure. On April 16th, I submitted a request to the city manager and the parking department that the expenses and the general operations of the parking fund be looked at regarding the operating expenses, the staffing, how are we staffed, how many people, where fund revenue is used, what is really the mission of the parking fund in terms of maintenance. Obviously, it has to cover the expenses of its actual collection operations, but how is it expended afterwards? And also a general question of whether some of these expenses could be incorporated into the general fund, or is it just truly the way it is and should be? Just wanted to give it a look to see if there was any expense trimming. So we received a memorandum with some answers, and we will hear a lot more now. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you. Gary Lammer, I'm the project manager for parking, and with me this evening,
Steve Thornton, Finance Director.
Basically, we did receive a memorandum, or memorandum to the council from Councilor Greenwald, looking to outline all of our expenses that we do in the parking division. And if you recall, at the last meeting, there was some discussion actually about expenses and what our expenses were. So this actually kind of is a good thing to be able to talk about it in public here as to what the expenses are and how we operate. There are many parts of the division in parking. There is the operations division, which most people see out on the street with the enforcement. And we have someone here in the office who is our customer service person that actually talks to the customers and is able to relate to them with their parking questions. And we have the operations manager. Operations manager is actually oversees that division, the day-to-day operations. In the memo, I gave you a little flavor of what they do. We do have job descriptions for each of those positions, if anybody's interested in looking at the actual job descriptions to see what their full responsibilities are. As we went through this list that was asked of us, it does fit into the actual rate increases that we've been speaking of. Over the last 13 years, the parking division continually looks at, just like any other part of the budget, we continually look at our expenses. And as you may understand, that over 13 years, it's very difficult to be able to maintain the same service levels without any increased rates. However, expenses continue to rise. Over those 13 years, we have done some types of cost cutting. One would be that in order to get more hours of operation on the street, we removed one full-time position and went to 2 part-time positions. That would allow us to actually get more operational hours on the street, and of course eliminated some of the benefit load, but that really wasn't the purpose of that. It was more to get the hours of operations to ensure compliance. So as you look down through this list of operating expenses, you'll see that we actually oversee the general parking activities, enforcing parking regulations. We maintain and rehabilitate parking lots. We work on and repair parking garages. There is a lot of maintenance as our infrastructure ages. As you'll see, that the Wells Street deck, as we spoke about at the last meeting, is going to be in need of some repairs. We're in that process now of evaluating what those repairs may be and what the cost may be. Typical striping of spaces in the lots and in the downtown area. And I'll go over what that means, because there's some perception that maybe that parking pays for the entire downtown area, but I'll explain that process when I get through this list. Snow plowing, removal, ice control, downtown maintenance related to the street parking, regular cleaning of debris, and sweeping of lots, garages, and spaces in the downtown. I bring up the other parts of the budget to explain that we, as the parking division, pay a portion of the downtown maintenance as far as sweeping and snow plowing. We pay for the areas that we actually have. The general fund picks up the rest of that fund, where they, again, take care of the rest of the streets and those types of things. So the parking division only pays a portion of that part through Public Works. And as you'll see outlined in the actual budget, in the current budget that we are proposing for FY15, it does outline those areas that we do pay a portion of. The other portion that it pays for is the downtown maintenance crew that is downtown trying to keep it aesthetically pleasing, keeping it picked up and cleaned. It pays for repairs in those areas if we get broken curbings. And it also pays for all the meters that are down there in the poles. There was a question about overhead. Just another comment. One of the other things that the parking division did do is, if you recall, they had very large vehicles that they used to utilize to go down through, back and forth, and do repairs. Prior to my arrival, they looked through this process and they reevaluated those vehicles, and they decreased the size of them, decreasing the cost of the actual purchase of the vehicles and the lease of the vehicles through fleet services. And as you'll see, we had an annual savings there of about $6,000. As far as the overhead goes, the way we understood this question is, what is the city administration fees and those types of things. And as you'll see outlined here, the finance director so eloquently put it, it basically says that administrative costs from the general fund or other funds, parking, solid waste, water, sewer, and fleet, based upon total expenditures, which are the operating, capital, and debt, in each of these funds, most recently completed fiscal year. The fee allocates portions of the expenditure related to the mayor, city council, city manager, city attorney, IMS, human resources, the clerk's division, and so on and so forth, with other divisions that we actually rely on for other parts of our division. As you're also aware, in the city, there isn't usually one department that stands alone. We rely on each other to be able to function. So that's what those costs are for. I've gone over the staffing a little bit. We do have 4 positions. There is 3 full-time positions and 1 part-time position right now, which is a .8. We have approximately 74 hours of enforcement on the street. And right now, currently, the way it's set up, with 2 personnel on the street, you're looking to need about 108 hours worth of operational time, personnel time. So that's the way our staffing is set up at this point. And I think there was a little, maybe I misunderstood a little bit of the question about should any expenses be incorporated into the general fund, but I think the general fund, we try to keep this as a user fee. We have many people who come in and use the system. They actually pay for the portions of the parking that they utilize, and we try to keep that off the taxpayer's burden so that we don't put that, again, on the taxpayer. We feel that it should remain as a user fee. We feel that there's enough room there to be able to increase some rates to be able to do that. And as you'll see in the next presentation, we've come up with a couple of different ideas on how we can do that. But as far as expenses being incorporated in the general fund, the other way we could look at that is that, does the parking division pay for the entirety of the downtown? And no, it does not. It only pays for a portion of that downtown.
Question answered.
Basically, it's the space that we use.
That was the gist of my question.
Thank you. I figured I'd get it on one of them.
Good. No, you got it on all of them, actually. It's partially for my information, but also for the public to actually understand that this is what the parking fund is doing. And were it not for the parking fund, the answer would be yes.
If it wasn't for the parking fund being in place?
Yeah.
If we were to continue services and continue to maintain our parking lots and garages, it would be placed on the taxpayer.
Very important comment is,
Absolutely.
as we're trying to balance the budget and also rationalize why we have meters and fines. So, questions from, yeah. Okay.
Just for clarification, So if we have a big snowstorm, let's say we get a foot of snow, and 20 parking spots are blocked with snow, and Public Works comes at night to remove that, that's what you're talking about, what we have to pay, or the parking fund has to pay because the snow is being removed so that parking spots can be utilized?
That is correct.
Oh, Gary, I was kind of wondering, the expenses seem to go up in FY '13 and through '15 or so, and then sort of go down a little bit in all your scenarios here. Even in FY '20, they seem to be a lot higher than they are in FY '09. I'm just kind of, in all of the scenarios, I'm just kind of wondering why. I know that we're taking care of, maybe the maintenance programs and some of the parking lots and whatever. I'm just kind of wondering if you could explain why things are sort of going up a bit and then going back down.
Sure, I'll give you initial portions of that, and I'm sure that the finance director would be able to also give some input on that. You're talking about just the expense side of, on this long sheet that we
Yes.
have here?
And I understand that this is under the previous question 4, when we're dealing with 5, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll talk about this when we talk about the other section of the other memo. But basically, a lot of these, the way these go up and down, in FY '13, again, we restructured a little bit. We had added on third personnel for the downtown area. So as much as we eliminated, we had decreased with one full-time employee, there was still a cost, and a little bit more of a cost than if we still continued on with that full-time employee. So there was a little bit of an additional cost for that. And Steve, I'm not sure if you have any other portions of that.
Yeah, to get into the weeds a little bit, so from 12 to 13, 13 to 14, or is that what you're, or?
Yeah.
Or 13, yeah. Well, we had a few things in 13. We had our admin fee, you want to get rid of the weed?
Well, if you could just